1 in 5 teachers cannot afford to live on their salary alone. We knew this, nobody is shocked. But a new national report from Gallup has dropped. And yes, official data like this is important, even if it's something that we know already. You know what I mean? More than half of teachers say they are barely making ends meet. And 1 in 3 is working a second job. Sound off in the comments. What did yours used to be? What is it now? Mine was Postmates and DoorDash. I would finish school, make my hour-and-a-half commute home in rush hour. Then I would deliver food until I could afford to buy myself dinner or whatever essentials I needed. I remember I had a very specific meltdown about needing to buy Q-tips one time. And then I'd go home. This is not unique. 85% of teachers who are doing this second job thing are doing it during the school year. This is not like a summer gig. Teachers are teaching all day and then working more at night. The Department of Education is being sued for refusing to release records pertaining to how or if they are enforcing civil rights in schools. You know, just one of the department's original and most important jobs. Inside the Department of Education, there is something called the Office of Civil Rights. Usually it's called OCR. For decades, the Department of Education has kept a database of all the investigations that OCR was looking into. These are thousands of complaints every single year at schools and colleges across the country. Journalists, parents, and advocates could look at the database to see what was going on in the spirit of transparency. You know, what's that? They could see what schools were under investigation for what, when that investigation was open, what they have done so far, what they have not done, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture. But according to ProPublica, in the lawsuit that they filed, the investigations database has not been updated since January 2025. That's after half of the Office of Civil Rights offices across the country were closed. Tons of the staff was laid off, and not just laid off, actually, they were put on administrative leave. And the Department of Education continued to pay them, even though these people wanted to work and do their jobs. These employees were paid up to $38 million to just sit there while they were not allowed to work. And meanwhile, these discrimination cases were just piling up. So because the public could not see what was going on, ProPublica filled out 4 FOIA requests. That's Freedom of Information Act requests. That's the law that allows journalists to access government records. They asked the Department of Education for things like letters sent to schools notifying them if they were being investigated for discrimination, data showing which civil rights cases were open or closed, records showing which previous discrimination records were reversed, and communication between the Department of Education and outside influences like the Heritage Foundation or Moms for Liberty, just to see who might be influencing the Department of Education. The Department of Education acknowledged these requests and then did nothing. So that's why ProPublica is suing them. This change to Pell Grants kind of worries me because I want students to have a choice-filled future. Right now, Pell Grants are federal grants that allow low-income students to pay for college. They're mostly used for associate's degrees, bachelor degrees, graduate degrees, things like that, but also some longer certificate programs. But under a proposed rule in 2026, students may also be able to start using Pell Grants for very short-term job training programs. And these programs are important and needed. We need welders and cybersecurity people and truck drivers and medical billing personnel. And these short-term programs have perks. People can go to these programs and enter the workforce very quickly without taking on additional student debt. My concern is that this has been done before poorly. In tracking, different groups of students have been forced into different tracks. One is the traditional pathway, so to speak. High school, college, graduate degrees, professional career. The other is the workforce track, which is like high school, short job training, and then immediate entry into the workforce. And that track is what the Trump administration is really, really pushing right now. This actually has a lot of bipartisan support too, because the labor market and corporations need these specific types of jobs. So they are trying to get more people into these jobs. The thing I want us to pay attention to is which types of people are being pushed into which type of pathway. Historically, wealthier students tend to be pushed towards that professional career category. They tend to have higher lifetime earnings, more upward mobility, more flexibility, more opportunities to switch careers, things like that. And then low-income students are often pushed towards the workforce track. And while that means they can get jobs very quickly, and that's the kind of jobs that we really need right now, these jobs often tend to have narrower career paths, and they can be harder to move beyond later. One of the things that freaks me out is that this administration is also shrinking upward mobility. They're putting extra stipulations on federal student loan borrowing, things like that. It's I just don't trust these people to do this well. The 24 attorneys general and 2 governors have sent a letter to the Department of Education saying they are going to make the healthcare shortage a lot worse if they carry on with that student loan rule that I've been yapping about for a long time. That's the rule that could change how much money graduate students are allowed to borrow based on whether their career is labeled graduate or professional. Right now, nursing schools are already turning away a lot of student applicants because they don't have enough faculty. You see, under the law passed last year, careers that are labeled professional degree careers are able to borrow more money for student loans. Graduate degrees are allowed to borrow less. And the list that the Department of Education used to determine which career goes where, they honestly pulled it out of their ass. I'm sorry. I have no better way to say that. This was an arbitrary list, never used for anything. And it is as old as time. It makes no sense. None. The problem flagged here is that a lot of healthcare training doesn't fit into this narrow definition. Nurse practitioner degrees, physician assistant programs, physical therapy doctorates, these types of careers could be excluded under the current definition of professional or graduate degrees. And research shows us that this little move is not likely to force universities or colleges to lower their tuition. What we can expect to see if we look at the history and the data of it all is certain types of people will be shut out from pursuing these degrees because they don't have the money to bridge the gap between, okay, my program costs this much, I'm allowed to borrow this much, and I'm going to either pay out of pocket to cover the rest of it or get private loans, which just are way worse all around. Again, this is going to also lessen the number of professionals educating these students. It's going to shrink the whole pipeline. The Department of Education is still reviewing these comments now. There were 65,000 comments left during this public comment period. People are very passionate and very worried about this. I'm sorry. Funding issues are not something that can just be solved by eliminating the Department of Education and, quote, returning education to the states. Because a lot of the decisions happening at the state level are part of the problem. In general, because special education students have more needs, their education costs more. And in Kentucky, for example, the state is supposed to reimburse schools 92% of that excess money that is spent to give these students an education. And year after year, the state has just not done that. So local school districts have to provide the services that students are legally entitled to give them access to education, as is their right, not just because of IDEA, but in general, every student has a right to education. And mind you, IDEA at the federal level has never been funded at the 40% that Congress promised they would fund IDEA. I think it's 14% is the highest we've seen. So IDEA is not being properly funded at the federal level. And then at the state level, schools are not being properly reimbursed by the state. And this is with the Department of Education's oversight, which is being stripped away and weakened every single day. So you can see why many of us are alarmed. According to Johnson County superintendents, the 6 districts that they are talking about here are forced to divert about $1,400 per student away from general education because of this underfunding of special education. And this is one of the reasons why lawmakers and school choice advocates point to school districts and say they are not funding special education, they are not serving all students, they're not doing a good job. But it's not the district's fault. The reason so many districts are financially strained as they are is because there are failings at the state and federal level. And dismantling the Department of Education is just going to make that worse. Because who is watching these states, right? One state might fund special education way better than another state. They might be properly reimbursing their districts. Somebody else may not. And what are the consequences if there's nobody watching them, you know? And the part that really gets me about Kansas in particular is they have the money to do this. Enrollment has been falling. So they are sitting on literally $269 million. And the special education shortfall in this county that's being looked at is $61 million. So the argument is they can do the right thing. They're just choosing not to. I'm going to try to redo my workflow so that I am going to be able to get on here every night and tell you the news. That is the goal. I am saying it out loud so that I can hold myself accountable. One reason it's really good to be informed is so that during your once a month school board meeting, you can show up with public comments and be like, hey, I heard this is going on at the federal level. I heard this is going on at the state level. What can we do about it? What is our district safeguard against these attacks on public education? Like, whatever. But like, a lot of the stuff I talk about continues to be updated. It's ongoing. If you care about public education, maybe you're a teacher or you love one, you can park it here. You can like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, and you can count either on this show or in shorts that I will update you on what's going on, keep you posted, and do it in some semblance of a way as to not make us panic. And I promise you, if there is some crazy breaking news, you can find it on shorts. I will break it down for you. And here in this format, I will be able to tell you everything slowly, calmly. And I'll be back hopefully tomorrow with more. Okay? Love you. Good night.